Please join me for a salute to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight, we're going to be interviewing 3 candidates for town manager, but we have some other business to take care of before that. Before we get going, I want to thank the DPW for their work in this past storm. They did an exceptional job. Obviously, the police and fire also, who were quite busy, but I want to recognize the people at the Senior Center, Amy Barrett, Robin LaRossi, and Chris Schultz from the Board of Health, who manned the warming station that thankfully we didn't need, but they were down there through the whole storm in case people needed somewhere to go. So I just wanted to recognize their efforts. So we're going to jump down to the first item under number 1 would be vote to extend the hours of operation entertainment license for the Abington Ale House outside patio area for acoustical live music from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is an existing license. They're just looking to expand it. Anybody here want to be heard on the Ale House? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. Second item, vote to amend the previous vote of the Select Board placing warrant article for the annual town meeting for 4 additional police officers. I had asked to have this on. We just appointed 7 police officers that are doing quite well, and the chief is here. We just decided with the fiscal situation as it is and budgetary problems we're having that we should withdraw that and look to do it in the future. So we need to take it as a vote. And I spoke to the chief and he's all right. Come on up, Chiefy.
Yes, we spoke in the last meeting. I detailed that, you know, since I've been here, I said I'm going to advocate like crazy for our wants and our needs and not necessarily our wants. And right now, 4 bodies in this financial time is more of a want than a need. I'm excited about the prospect of picking that up when things get better, for sure, because expanding our team would be great, but it is definitely not the right time, and we've got to focus on keeping the people that we have here, and like you said, they're doing an incredible job, and I need to focus on keeping them in place.
Great. I'll entertain a motion to withdraw the article for the 4 additional police officers.
I'll make a motion to reconsider the previous vote of the board by placing a warrant article of the annual town meeting and a ballot question on the special town election ballot and to rescind those 2.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote unanimous. Thank you, Chief. Number 3, we're going to approve the minutes of the November 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. We are going to approve the minutes of December 3rd.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. We are going to vote to do the December 17th minutes.
December 8th?
Nope, December 8th is crossed off.
It is, okay.
I'll make a motion.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. And lastly, we'll do the minutes of Thursday, January 15th. Is there a motion? Kevin was absent, so he will
I'll
be
make a motion.
abstaining.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous.
I abstain.
Trustee.
Yep, I'm sorry, one abstention. Being that the time is 5:35, we are going to start the interviews for town manager, so if any of the...
You have the hearing for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here I am trying to get carried away. We have a 5:35 hearing. Request for a Class 2 license transfer from Vito's Auto Center, 135 Bedford Street, to Fox Auto Group, same address. Rogerio Creelo, manager, with 17 vehicles for sale, 2 customer spaces and 1 employee space, for a total of 20 parking spaces. Is anybody here for that license? Come on up, please. Motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi, can
Thank
you
you,
tell us
Gary.
what you plan to do?
So we're planning to put some cars there for sale and make it beautiful, do some paving, paint the building, and yeah, start a business over there. We have a business already in Abington on Center Street, but we have a license for 5 cars, and we saw the opportunity to get a lot so we can put more cars over there, so yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions by the board?
Just a comment, if I could.
Yeah.
When the problem, and it's not for you, it's a general thing I say to every applicant who comes in for Class 2 licenses, is that when we give you permission and license for X amount of vehicles, in your case, you have 17 cars for sale, 2 customer spaces, 1 employee space, no more than 20 on the property.
Yes,
That's what we mean.
okay.
Generally, what has happened in the past, we've seen people don't adhere to that, they go far and above that, and that's when we have problems. So,
Okay.
just so you understand that
Yes.
for the record,
Yes.
that's what it is. That's all I have.
Anybody else on the board? Anybody in the crowd want to be heard on this hearing? Apparently not. Motion by the board?
I'll make a motion to approve based on their application of cars that were delineated,
And all approvals by the,
and with the respective departments.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is unanimous.
Thank you,
Well said.
guys.
Thank you. Next, we'll be doing the interviews for the town manager position, so any of the candidates will have to leave the room, other than the first candidate, which is Angie Ellison. There she comes. Good timing, Angie. We'll have you come to the podium.
Do you just want to give the report of the committee?
Yeah, I'm going to do that once we get her up there. We have 3 candidates to interview tonight. I'm going to read a report we put together for the search committee. The town manager search committee comprised of 7 members, which included 1 member of the finance committee, 1 member of the school committee, has met and reports recommending the finalists for the position of town manager. Each member of the search committee had the ability to independently review all the applications, debate the qualifications, and ask any and all questions it wanted to of the candidates that were interviewed. To recap, the position of town manager was advertised in the Mass Municipal Association Job Opportunities website on December 2nd, with a deadline for applications on January the 5th. The search committee met on January 5th after the deadline and received all the applications. The committee then voted to set 2 meeting dates and met on Saturday, just January 17th, for the purpose of reviewing and narrowing the applicants down to 5 that were to be voted to be interviewed. 5 candidates were identified and invited for the interview, confirming their attendance. Prior to the date of the interview on Saturday, January 24th, 2 of the candidates withdrew from further consideration of the process. The committee met and interviewed the remaining 3 candidates. At the January 24th, 2026 meeting, the committee unanimously recommends to the Select Board the following candidates, and additionally, the committee decided to again unanimously rank the candidates in preferential order as follows. Number 1, Michael Maresco. Number 2, Angie Ellison. Number 3, Joseph Reynolds. The ranking is for the information of the Select Board and obviously does not dictate how the Select Board will consider the candidates. All candidates are now properly before the board for final consideration, and having completed the duties as charged, it is by the town charter that the town manager search committee is now dissolved. Our first interview will be with Angie Ellison. Nice to see you again.
Likewise, thank you.
So what we're going to do is, we're going to start with Nicole and ask you a series of questions, and then we'll give you a couple of minutes at the end to give us a closing comment.
Certainly.
Nicole?
Hi, thank you for being with us. First, I see you were with the Army National Guard, so thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And my question, do you have any experience with debt exclusion projects and/or override questions? And if so, just explain the process of education of the public, the format of the questions, and the results, please.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a pleasure meeting you in person. I have had experience relative to debt exclusion, Prop 2.5, not only relative to an override, but also debt exclusion for a particular project, capital project, and/or municipal, usually, big building development things will, or school, a school building would typically manage the aspect of the debt exclusion, but for actual Proposition 2.5 override, I've had experience doing it. The last community I served in, we had an extensive process. It takes about that long of a period to be able to fulfill that aspect and being able to fully and engage the community. I think it's important for the community to be educated regardless of whether they approve the override or not, but for everyone to have and continue to have the same information. Our role as a municipality is to provide them that information, ideally, you know, with the support of the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and all of the infrastructure, in helping to get the message out and share that information and answer any questions that the residents may have. I've done it extensively through media. We've reached out to local papers. We've done a campaign. The faith-based institutions. There's a plethora of ways, and again, I'd have to be in Abington to know what some of the resources specifically are to be able to guide and help and shape the best approach, because some things that may work in one community may not work here at all, because the community's just not receptive to it, and ultimately, regardless of where you go, you need to be able to have the residents educated enough to make a decision to be able to take a vote, because it's an election. I call it an election, it's not but it's a vote that allows that Prop 2.5 to finally go through, even if it goes through town meeting.
Anyone have any follow-up questions to that?
We're going to go around first, and then we'll do that. Paul?
Well, my question, you pretty much answered it. I was just going to ask you, do you have experience formulating town budgets that required an override? And if so, how would you go about educating the public, and what were the results of that?
Yeah, I think the first half sort of addressed it, and because it's so recent, I have more extensive. I mean, the other position, if you haven't already done so, and I couldn't find it in any of the documents I looked at, to prepare for this interview, was you need to decide what type of budget, because depending on how you, in what type of override you do, will determine also how town meeting votes for or against it, because you are ultimately at the end required to present by mass law a balanced budget. All of the positions that I've held, the budget has always been mine. Except for Blandford, which was a part-time position. I was a town administrator there for 20 hours a week, and so it was a joint effort with the Select Board to develop the budget there. But otherwise, it's always been, the budget has been, I don't want to say mine, because I take a team approach, and it always falls on us putting it together, seeing what works, what doesn't work, the department heads working in a team approach. I've worked with developing budgets where I've asked department heads, you know, where can you cut? Because at some point, rather than me or the team sort of saying, let's cut 10% across the board, this way some departments that may have a little bit more flexibility with a smaller department, a 10% cut is significant. Where one of the larger, what I call the big fours, if they do a 10% cut, may not be, it may be just supplies.
Thank you very much.
Kevin?
If I could, thank you for showing up this evening. Drawing on your experience both, you know, in Blandford, Uxbridge, North Adams, and Fairhaven, I'm going to give you a scenario. A department head comes into your office first thing on a Monday morning and informs you that as of Friday, the department did not turn over to the treasurer the usual and required collection of checks and money that it appears funds may be missing. The department head then informs you that one of the employees has a known gambling problem. How would you handle the situation?
I laugh because I've had a similar situation in one of the communities, not so much relative to checks, but definitely embezzlement. I would definitely, first and foremost, regarding the actual funding, is get the finance team together and seeing the collector's office, what needed to be turned in, look at protocol and processes, where did the deficiency or the lack of take place? Was it, 5 of 5, the last check they were waiting on came in, and then it was 5 o'clock, there was an emergency, circumstances that prevented them from getting in on time. And then I would also, if there is, again, if there's a deficiency or funds that are missing, I would take the next step in regards to just thoroughly seeing where that is and who was responsible for bringing it in. Oftentimes, we jump to conclusions, and I think it's important to get the full picture and the facts and not make assumptions, because circumstances may dictate something else. If, in fact, it is embezzlement, then obviously the authorities and the appropriate people will be notified, an investigation will happen, and that person will be dealt with accordingly to disciplinary actions and staff development.
No, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Suzanne?
It's nice seeing you again. Thank you for coming. Can you tell me, what experience do you have with hiring, discipline, and termination of personnel?
Yeah. The hardest part of being a manager is the human resource aspect, the element of staffing and building a team and developing a team. I've always, and if you can, obviously from my resume, I've had extensive experience in higher education as well, so I've always been in a managerial position where I've been responsible for hiring, disciplining, and also developing staff. I think that's an important part of who I am as a manager. I see my role of building and growing a team and making sure that they are reaching their fullest potential and or ability. Some people may not excel in a position, not because they're not good. That field may not be their best fit, and then you try to find their areas of strength of other things and they excel in. I've had a situation where there was a woman who was an assistant position. I won't disclose the title because that may give it away, and was really comfortable being, and was unsure about moving into a position. I split treasurer collector position into 2 separate positions, and promoted her to that position of leadership, and she excelled. Was never given the opportunity to serve the community for well over 27 years. And I, till this day, she and I are good friends, and she talks about it, and, given her the opportunity to grow and develop. So I think that's in my DNA, in making sure I understand where staff are. Also understanding there's also that Peter principle, right? Sometimes someone may be best in a particular position, and when you elevate them, they may not need more support to be successful in those positions, or may not have the capacity to be able to do well in those positions. Terminating people is the hardest. I've done it. It's not the best, but sometimes you have to. And, sometimes in public sector, the ramifications are long-lived. For me, in one situation, in full transparency, was an issue in embezzlement, and the person was arrested, charged, indicted, and found guilty and is serving time. But unfortunately, I had to terminate a few others that were also in that same, I don't want to say circle, but failed to there's systems of checks and balances, and their portion of it wasn't fulfilled to be able to catch some of these things, and had to terminate them as well, although they didn't get indicted. But yeah, it's never fun. But it's an evil that, unfortunately, if you work with people and hire people, you have to contend with, but I always find it for myself and the way that I manage as the last resort. You know, we'll do a lot of training, a lot of development, a lot of, you know, what can we do differently, weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings, something to get you to succeed. And, you know, sometimes, as my mom says, you got to have that come to Jesus moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
My question, what is your policy on keeping the select board informed on major incidents that happen in town?
I think it's important because you are the elected body, and it's important for you to, because you may be, you know, at the coffee shop or at the grocery store, and someone's like, hey, did you hear? And then there's always someone in a community. I know every community I've gone to that has the scanner. And so they know everything that's happening before you even know, you get a call from anybody. So I would definitely send out communication in regards to, you know, if there's one of the biggest things that I did in previous communities, if outside state, like one time, like we had state police officers in town and they were doing a training, and you know, I'd want, because then someone's going to call a select board member and say, hey, what's going on at X, Y, and Z? There's all of this commotion. So those kinds of things, as well as to keep you informed of things that may be coming up that may or may not blow up. I would ask you individually, and I'd have one-on-one meetings with you individually, what your preference of communication, if it's a phone call, if it's text, if it's email, and so that way you get that information consistently. A thing that I typically do as a follow-up, in addition to your personal style or preference to communication, is I'll send out an email and I CC the collective body and just telling them, you know, everything that I've shared. And, you know, on that email too, it's, you know, the Select Board have been BCC'd for public records reasons. Just know that all 5 have been BCC'd, kind of thing, so it's
you.
important.
Nicole, you had a follow-up?
I was asking if anyone had a follow-up question.
If I could.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I have, you start.
No, I just had a question on your resume, but go ahead.
Oh, same, okay, I'll go first. For the towns, we can ask any question, right? Or is it just, okay. For the towns, I see you were town manager for 4 different towns on here. It looks like each about 2 to 3 years each. For Abington, do you see yourself staying here for more, like longer than that? Is that, you know, it's, so I just had a question on that. It was like a pretty short time for each town, so just wondering about that.
Yeah, so I can explain each individual one. My goal is, and it continues to be here for a long period of time. I have and continue to have visions and goals, and with the partnership with the Select Board, being able to move the community to like its next level and next phase, because it's sort of, you know, right now you're teetering on consistency, and then there's budget issues, and, you know, there's infrastructure issues, and every once in a while the state will throw you a curve, and so trying to maintain that aspect and just bring you over that hump and seeing the results of it. My first community I was in, and I sort of mentioned earlier, it was a part-time position. It was 20 hours a week. I was going through some personal life changes. I think it was a positive, but at the moment it wasn't. I was going through a divorce, and I needed to find a full-time job. The MMA allows for that to happen, so I did that. The second position was where I discovered the embezzlement, and at that point, there were a lot of things that came out of it, and we agreed that, and I served, the MMA's ethics allows you for 2 years, and I served out those time periods, so. Okay. The third community, I worked for a mayor. I was the chief of staff. I was the chief operating officer, his administrative officer. And when he decided not to run for re-election, I was out of a job, not by choice. Again, wanting to stay longer, and then in this community, it was incredible. I developed staff, and actually, if I can thereafter, I have accomplishments within a 3-year period that I had done. I also shared it with the search committee in regards to some of the things that I've accomplished in a short period of time, wanting to see that the override, and also I think there was a general dislike for the charter. Some people ran on the idea that the select board needed to be the hiring entity for the municipality and had to have direct report of all of the municipality and other factors, and they won, and then they decided that they were going to go in a different direction. We mutually agreed on a separation because the previous board had renewed my contract, and we were in negotiations for my next term. An election happened, and the new board decided to go in a different direction. Looking back at my career, I think one of the things that I take away from it is that most of those communities brought me in when in a very challenging time in their community, but also they were communities that are considered challenging communities, and I was able to turn it around and put infrastructure, put in systems, policies that balance and create a long-term effect. Particularly, I look at one of the communities where the embezzlement took place, just all of the things that I've developed, the town manager that came after me, because of prior to me, every town manager was there for 2 years or less. And then I developed all of these infrastructures, and thereafter, the town manager has been there for at least 7 years. So I think looking back at what I've done shows that the progression. I do, and I want to emphasize, I do want to stay here long-term, and that's my goal, because I know I do good work, and I want to see the end results of it, and I'd like to be part of the community. In all of the communities when I go in, I mean, I participate in parades, I go to events, when they have sort of festivals, I take my kids to them. And so things like that are important to me, and I have to feel part of a community, and that's what I would hope to have here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
I noticed, and I think this is important, you were an elected official as the elementary school committee, regional school committee, and a member of the Board of Selectmen, is that correct?
But don't tell anybody, it's a secret.
What town was that?
Sturbridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, and the reason I say that is that sometimes managers don't understand sitting on this side of the table, and I think it's good, it's healthy when you've been on both sides of the table and you understand clearly as a select man, woman, what you would run up against and how you would act as a manager. So I was just curious on that and what community it was. Thank you.
Yeah, it was Sturbridge, it was a regional school committee as well, for the high school and junior high.
Great.
Yeah, and I also presently sit on 2 boards that are nonprofits, so.
Excellent.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one.
Sure, Paul.
So if a resident, hypothetical, they have a dispute with a certain department or board, and they don't like their results, so they send you an email basically saying, we disagree with this department. How would you, response time, how many days do you think it would take for you to try and resolve whatever the issue may be?
A board or a department staff?
Department.
Well, any complaint that I get from a resident is almost immediate. There's a response.
Yep.
Whether I can handle it right then and there or not, there is a response. If it's email, I typically, when I receive it, if I can respond to it right away, I have your email, I'll get back to you if you don't, and I also, and this is standard for me, I always say, if you don't hear back from me by, please follow up and follow through, like it's not a bother, it could have just slipped the list, or some other urgent matter came up. One of you guys called me in the middle of me picking up a phone, and I hung up the phone and never followed through with that. So I make a habit of always doing that. I truly take the customer service approach to residents. They're our constituencies, right? They're our client. And I think that comes from my higher education background in being able, because the student's your commodity. And so, you can't say, I love working in higher ed, but if it wasn't for the students, right? I love working in municipality, but if it wasn't for the resident, like that's what you're here for. And so I think it's important for them to get, and there've been a lot of situations and circumstances that I've helped resolve some of those things.
Right. Any other questions?
Can I ask one more?
Of course you can.
Sorry. Has there ever been a time that you've changed your mind on something after listening to a resident? And if you did change your mind, what prompted that shift?
Often, I don't make impulsive decisions, especially if it's impactful. I mean, if it's someone saying, the police gave me a parking ticket, telling them the process is pretty simple. I don't have to, no offense, because I saw the police officer, that's why out of the corner of my eye.
That's the chief.
Yeah. Hi, Chief. Good, how are you? I apologize. But so I think one of the things that is important to be able to do is acknowledge that, because that's why I take a team approach to a lot of problem solving, especially because I think a certain way. Someone else thinks a different way or may see things in a different perspective, so it's important to be able to share those differences of opinion. And it may shape or change and yes, there have been situations, I don't take any offense to, I didn't think of it that way. Oh, yeah. That's why I have department head meetings sometimes where I'll just throw out a problem and we try to tackle it from different perspectives, because the fire chief may be looking at it differently than the building inspector, than, someone from COA, and looking at it from all different perspectives. I may not have thought the impact it would have had elsewhere or in a different direction. So, yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Thank you. Any others? All set? You want to give us a couple of minute closing statement?
Yeah, if I may approach, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I have a list, and I shared this with the committee.
Yes.
Yes.
You're more than welcome. These are all of the accomplishments that I mentioned in regards to
Thank you.
the town. I don't think I could keep it. In regards to my last position and all of the things that I had accomplished within the year in different areas of municipal government. If there's anything that stands out to you that you'd like to talk about, I'd be more than happy to elaborate on them more. I am dedicated to public service. I've only worked in the public sector my entire career. From higher education to my consulting work, as well as my municipal work now. I sort of joke, my undergrad and my graduate work are in political science and American studies, so my higher ed was my outlier, and that was a full career in itself. So I'm dedicated to making and wanting to see municipalities succeed. It's part of who I am and what I'd like to accomplish for the community, and I think Abington is a great community and it's a good fit. I'm very particular in looking at my next position because I do want a stable community. I want one that is looking to grow and develop and wanting to move forward and have a vision for its future, and it seems to be what you are here in regards to being a more conducive and continuity in moving forward. So that is my work. The only other thing that I wanted to, it was more a question to the board, if it's possible, is when the names became public, I noticed that one of the candidates is the interim TA. So I guess my question to the board is, having an interim sort of throws the balance for the other two candidates. And so I don't want to, are all of us on the same playing field, or is there, because there's an internal candidate, a little difference in regards to approach or thought process for you collectively or individually?
No, I can answer that. No, everybody is on an equal playing field. The interim has only been here for a very short period of time, so there really hasn't been enough time. It isn't as though he's been here, for 6 months or what have you, so it's been a very short period of time. All candidates are on an equal playing field, and you've been through the process with the search committee, and then the selectmen will make the determination. But clearly, based on your experiences and and that was the reason I gave the follow-up that I did in terms of your elected position, because I think that weighs in my mind in terms of the ability to understand the position of manager and having sat on this side of the table. So that's as far as that goes from my standpoint. But no, in answer to your question, everybody's equal, and we'll proceed accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now, may I sit or do I?
Certainly.
Sure.
Because that would be awesome. Thank you.
Chief, can you go out in the hallway and grab Joe Reynolds? Yeah, if you have your phones on, can you shut them off? Thank you. It's funny, I shut my ringer off, my volume off, and then shut the
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I did.
But I had to do it in the middle of the meeting because I forgot to at the beginning. Next interview is with Joseph Reynolds. Joe, good to see you again.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Select Board. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be here this evening, to have been selected one of the 3 finalists, and to present my credentials to you.
Good to see you again. So we're going to start with Nicole. We're going to ask a series of questions, and then we'll have follow-ups, and then we'll let you take a couple of minutes at the end to give us a closing statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi, thank you for being with us.
Thank
Also, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So the first question, do you have any experience with debt exclusion projects and/or override questions? And if so, just explain the process of education to the public, format of the questions, and the results.
Certainly. As a matter of fact, I do. I am an elected councilor in the town of Braintree. I've just been elected to my 2-year term. We had a new mayor come into office 2 years ago. As part of that process, we knew that we were having plenty of challenges from a revenue generation standpoint. Sustained revenues, costs, obviously, were far outgrowing our revenues, particularly in the area of school. And one of the things that we had to do is that previously, 2 years ago, we did a debt override, debt exclusion, override. That was earmarked for $8 million. We were able to use that money, and that was put into some of the key foundational parts of our government, into the schools, into our police department, and into our DPW as well. With the debt exclusion, with the 2.5 override, it was obvious that we were not, as a community, being able to stay up with our revenues due to the fact of our limits on 2.5. One of the things that we talked about with the mayor, and at the time I was the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee for the council, one of the things we spoke about was that there's folks who want to cut taxes, cut services. and then there's also folks who want to raise taxes. So working with the mayor's office and the finance director, we found a few ways that we could cut back on some of our costs. Some of the things we approached were we wanted to make sure we could preserve jobs, but we had to look at the workforce as well. The educational part, that was a difficult task, but we had a pretty good game plan going into that. We have about 4 different neighborhood community associations. We did road trips. We had Zoom calls. We had meetings at the school. There was a lot of discussion, particularly at the school committee, to talk about the override. And we would, at time, also have a question and answer at the council meeting as well. There were, shall I say, factions that were against the override. There were factions that were for it. Fortunately for us, we were able to convince the public that this wasn't just going to be, we're pulling this one lever to raise your taxes. We also let them know that we're making changes. We were containing costs. We were willing to make cuts. We were willing to step back temporarily. I say temporarily because we know that services are going to continue to grow in cost. But it gave us the breathing room to be able to look for further revenues, more sustainable programs that we could get the community better educated in, so that we all understood, or most importantly, the taxpayers understood, that the world is constantly changing, and we as a community, we really, if we're going to be responsible leaders, we have to be able to communicate those changes and the need for us to stay with that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul?
So again, my question's sort of similar. Do you have experience in formulating a town budget that required an override? And if so, could you explain the process of educating the public, the format of the question, and the results of the question?
Certainly. To the first part of the question, formulating a town budget. I did that as the Chief of Staff and Director of Operations under the Mayor. I did that for 3 years. And it was really, my hands were very much into the process. From the time building out worksheets, building out priorities, streamlining, we were able to, in some cases, combine departments. We were able to create additional revenues through rentals of properties, things of that nature, incremental improvements in both of those areas. Formulating the override, primarily, that is the mayor's initiative. But as the debt exclusion, I was the chairman. For the override, I was the vice chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. We had a say. We had the opportunity to look at the numbers, to understand why the town was pursuing the amount of money that they were looking for. Part of the key to successes in getting both of those was to understand and to clearly communicate where that money was going. Why are we asking for it? That was another key aspect to it. It wasn't an overreach. We had a very good idea where the bleeding was occurring. We had a very good handle on where the expenses were going to be growing. We anticipated the growth of those various expenses across the various departments. Public safety, DPW, our schools, the libraries, all these various things. So again, what we did is we looked at the large majority of these debt exclusions and the override went towards our schools. Now, the 2.5 override, it was an $8 million override. We couldn't earmark that money. That went into the tax levy. But what it did, it gave us a boost so that for the subsequent years, we could build 2.5 on top of a larger tax levy as a result of the override. Is there anything that I may have missed in that answer for you?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Kevin?
If you could, a department head comes into your office first thing on Monday morning and informs you that as of Friday, the department did not turn over to the treasurer the usual and required collection of checks and money, and it appears funds may be missing. The department head then informs you that one of the employees has a known gambling problem. How would you handle the situation?
Well, obviously, working in conjunction with the tax collector's department, first thing that I would do, got to verify the information. Got to verify what's missing. You do notify the Board of Selectmen, obviously, to keep you well informed of what's happening. Here's a developing situation. We would then, I would ask that the department head double-check to confirm, once again, this money. We could then use ourselves, I guess it's kind of thinking backwards. We're building it backwards. Where's all the information that we could confirm, and at what point does the ability to confirm our information now become unreliable? Obviously, by the results of looking at that situation, you would contact the legal authorities, obviously. That would have to be the start of it.
Thank you.
Suzanne?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
My question is, what experience do you have with hiring, discipline, and terminating personnel?
I have extensive experience in that area. In the municipal world, as a chief of staff and director of operations, I played a major role in interviewing folks for department head positions and any other key positions that the mayor had prioritized. I've had an ability through the years of managing people, getting to know and understand what makes people work. So in the interviewing process, I like them to tell me what are the things that they're proud of doing. How did they do it? But most importantly, too, I want to understand from these folks, where were your failures? What were the things that you just didn't come up and meet the mark on? And what did you learn from it? So I've had an opportunity through the military, through the private sector, state government, and municipal government to hire a lot of different people in very key positions. And it was the level of responsibility and maturity that an individual can convey to me in that interview, and also rely a lot on to confirm my take on individuals, their references, and where they worked. Did I understand what they did? If I didn't, I'm going to learn about what they did so that I can confirm for certain what they're telling me is factual. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is developing people. So someone who has to be open to being developed or to collaborate. And you can tell by language that certain people use in an interview, whether it's we or is it I. And the number of uses of those terms can be a key indicator to somebody. Are they a team player? Are they a collaborator? Because I'm not a subject matter expert, and if I'm going to hire a subject matter expert, that person has got to convince me that they truly are that subject matter expert. But they also have to convince me that, are you willing to work with me, who has the responsibility of setting the framework for the responsibilities that you need to carry out that we would rely upon? Are you someone who also develops the people who work for you? Do you build up a bench strength? Is it all about you, or is it all about your dedication to the department you're going to be overseeing, or the role that you're going to be playing?
Thank you.
What is your policy of keeping the select board informed on major incidents that happen in town?
Well, obviously, it starts with the key communications with your department heads. You have to have a situational awareness always. You have to be able to anticipate where these problems. Sometimes something will come out of the blue. But if you're truly managing and supervising properly, you're not going to be surprised. But if you are, you go right to that department head who is responsible for the area where this problem has developed or has come up out of the blue. I want to get the take from that department head. What has happened? Is there control of the situation? Have you stabilize the situation. In some cases, I like to use the analogy of an operating room or an emergency room. When you triage, you have to make sure you stop the bleeding. Is there still a risk at hand of what's happening? What happened? Do you have a control, and have those controls been put in place to prevent any further harm? And one of the things that has really worked out well in my own experiences across the various areas I've worked in is having a risk management program in place where you have policies and procedures so that people understand that we live in a world where we need to prevent fraud and abuse and waste. So, with that mindset, I would like to think that the organization is going to be better prepared to prevent problems, sir, as you've just described. But we don't live in a perfect world. But do we have the ability to react quickly and the controls in place to ensure it doesn't get worse? And that communication always will go to the Board of Selectmen. I understand that in this role, you have to be accountable to the Board of Selectmen, keep you always informed, because I won't do my job properly if you're caught by surprise. How come you didn't tell me that, Joe, before? Why didn't you say that perhaps you had some concerns in this particular area? That's a judgment call, and through my experiences, I've done a very good job of keeping my chain of command, my boss, informed.
Very good. Any follow-up questions? Nicole?
I have two.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you, same thing I asked the first. Can you tell us about a time that you changed your mind after listening to a resident and what prompted the shift, or I guess resident or staff?
Well, as a counselor and also as the chief of staff, one of the most important things was to give a voice to the constituents. Everybody has different opinions. At first, I was a little concerned about an override. And there were people who said, Joe, we really, really need this. We can't sustain it. Our schools, for example, our special ed programs are just wilting away, and we don't have the ability to sustain the high quality of service that the town renders in that area. That's a vulnerable population for us. We also, I understood that class sizes, there was some real numbers. I was a little bit skeptical about whether or not we needed to pass an override at the size that was being proposed. Through conversations with a lot of concerned parents, constituents of mine who were on the school committee as well, they were able to convince me that this is for the greater good. There's times that you need to take a little bit more bitter medicine than you want to. And I'm happy that I did change my mind on that, because the results right now have put us in a much better position for our class sizes, and also, most especially, we've been able to build up our special education reserve and stabilization funds. So that's important.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole?
Yes, and just one more, what's a decision that you made that was unpopular, sort of related to the last question you answered, unpopular but necessary, and just how did you communicate that decision?
Certainly. Well, again, I'll have to lean a little more on my town council experiences in just the last few years. In my district, there was an old Catholic church, which was actually my home parish, and the Archdiocese had made the decision to close it down. Obviously, the neighbors and the parishioners were very, very upset. They wanted me to fight the Archdiocese over it. I understood that this was a fight we were not going to win, unfortunately, if you looked at the larger picture of the declining numbers. So, my next priority is to ensure whatever the future use of that property was going to be, because the Archdiocese communicated to me that we were going to sell it, and we would like to get as much money as we can. So they were promoting the types of uses that were not harmonious with a single-family neighborhood, which this church was in the midst of. And So I worked with a couple of developers, and one decided to buy the property, and he wanted to build a daycare center, and he wanted to build an assisted living facility on this acreage. I had convinced him to build instead residential in the form of 55-plus condominiums, and it would be a homeowners community, if you will, organization. And people were outraged that, three-quarters of the property was green space. It was woods that had been grown over. It was an old orchard years and years ago before the church was built there. And people were dragging me through the mud about how could I do this? How could I do this? And I was able to, I held a number of neighborhood meetings, and we spelt out what all the alternative solutions might be for this property. And that, again, times have changed. I'm glad to say that the project went forward, and the neighbors have been giving me good feedback that it's a beautiful facility, and it's going to really add. But what was the key? The key was communication to them, to address their fears, to address what the outcomes, that we're working on, really diligently on, to get. And to me, I was surprised that a certain number of people who did come to me and said, I'm glad we did this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin?
If I could, just turning to Braintree, if I could.
Yes.
Were you chief of staff when Joe Sullivan was mayor?
I was.
And was Peter Moran, before he left for Norwell, were you?
Peter Moran had already left.
Ah.
I was the vice chair of the planning board at the time. And Peter was succeeded by a gentleman who, unfortunately, got cancer, and unfortunately, he was not able to beat it. The position was open, and Joe approached me about the possibility of taking over the position.
So you stayed with him till the end when he? I know
did.
he opted not to run for re-election, but.
Yes, and he had asked me, in his words, Joe, I need you to run through the tape with me. And I said, absolutely. This is my town, too.
Yeah.
I understood what it takes to do the job. I wasn't going to bail at the last minute. I wanted to do the job right to the end.
And I know he can be a taskmaster, so I understand.
Yes.
And as it relates to the override, I'm assuming you're talking about the current mayor, and you had the override. Was it? You alluded to it, but it was successful. Is that correct?
It was. It was an
And
$8
How
million.
much of a margin did it pass by?
I believe it passed, I think it passed by at least 14%.
Okay.
At least 14%.
Okay.
And again, what it had to do with it is, again, people are going to want to raise taxes, and people are going to want to cut. And it's a little bit of both, and thankfully, we were able to impress upon enough of the community to say, this is what is needed, and we need to move forward with it.
Very good. Thanks.
Paul?
All right, so if a resident sends you an email with a complaint, they had a disagreement with a certain department, what would your timeline be for a turnaround to get it resolved?
That's a good question. Thank you for that one. One of the things I took great pride in is that we had C-Click Fix as an application, Commonwealth Connect, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's a residential way to send in an email. You can send in pictures if you have a problem, anything to do with a particular department or a constituent need. And so the resolution turnaround was roughly 3 weeks at best. When I took over as chief of staff, I made sure I hired a young man who was very tech savvy. And I laid out, I said, listen, we've got to do a better job here. How can we do better communications internally? Once that complaint comes in, I want acknowledgement right away from the department who is responsible for addressing that problem. I've also, what we did is through our weekly staff meetings, we communicated to all the department heads and emphasized the point. We're in the customer service business. And we may not agree with all of our constituents and their points of view. That doesn't mean that you have to change your mind. If you feel as if you know more about a situation, you need to convince that individual of what your expertise in the issue is. What's the relevance? And think through. And a lot of times, When they did that, and my own experiences as well, the individual on the other line, on the other end of the phone, was satisfied. They might not have liked the answer, but they liked that you took the time to walk through the problem, understand what's contributing to the problem, and when you look at the bigger picture, what options do we have? Can we make some improvement? I always seek to make some kind of an improvement and make that constituent happy. But I'm not going to lie to a constituent. And the department head also has to understand that you are in the customer service business. You respect your constituents. When you speak to them, you do not yell at them. If you have a difference of opinion, you let them know in a very in a respectful manner. We can agree to disagree, and if I don't have an answer for them, I can get back to you. But make sure you get back to them, because your credibility is at stake. And the constituents really know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Anybody else up? Joe, you want to take a couple minutes and give us a closing statement?
Certainly. What I do is, I've been a long-time public service servant, and in that, I have taken my experiences and responsibilities from the military to the private sector, as a volunteer on boards, and really it's only been the last 5 years that I've been somebody, or actually 8 years, that I have actually been on a public payroll. I consider that to be my third career. But the most important thing, I think, out of all of that, I've been able to gather experiences that have really lent themselves to when I took the job of Chief of Staff, when I took the job as a elected counselor, and what I strongly believe in this job. I have those experiences. They're parallel experiences where you have responsibility and you have accountability. And it's getting the people that you work with to collaborate and understand. One of the most important things that I have found in getting success in building a team is letting them know that they have to be accountable and that I know what your responsibilities are and I want you to tell me what they are. And then we can come to that agreement, because you're a professional, particularly the subject matter experts, department heads. They're the subject matter expert. I am not. But I am responsible for the actions and the outcomes of your department and the town as a whole, as a town manager, on behalf of this board, this select board. The ability to communicate that and to have them tell you back gives you assurances now that you're building trust. That's one of the most important things that I've been able to do. One of the things that I have found that have really humbled me at times is during COVID, I was asked to help out a very large nonprofit that dealt with vulnerable citizens, children. And COVID hit hard, and they had a few different homes that they had operated. They were in a panic. They didn't know what to do. The state was shutting down. And I had an experience with the CEO when I was working for the town of Braintree as the Chief of Staff, and she asked me, is there anything that you can do to kind of help us? And I said, yes. I had a lot of risk management experiences in the private sector and obviously in the military as an infantry officer. And again, it was just calming the situation down, just assessing what's the situation, what are the most important things that we need to do. How do we formulate some plans? I need to get confirmation from you, the subject matter experts. What are the most vulnerable parts of your operation? What are the things that we can do? Immediately start calling different people about getting PPI equipment, being able to make sure sanitation and protocols are being put in place. And I'm very proud to say not one of those children got COVID. That's one of the experiences, that if there's a human element to what you do, but there's also a decisiveness. When you lead, you lead. When you follow, you follow. You've got to be able to take directions in order to give direction. And I'd like to think that those experiences that I have had will bring value to you as a Board of Selectmen and will bring value to the citizens of Abington. And I would do this with great enthusiasm. I like doing this type of stuff. Challenges, we're always going to have them. My father and mother taught me about responsibility and integrity. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And when things are tough, don't wilt. Stand strong, understand, take a deep breath. Things can get fixed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
Thank
Joe,
you.
for coming in.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you. Will you be needing me any further this evening?
Nope, we won't.
Thank you.
Chief, can you find the next candidate? I know everybody's here for the animals. I can tell.
Unless they're here for conservation, that was supposed to start at 6:30.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I forgot, that's right, we
I
bumped
think
them.
they got,
Yeah, they didn't have a quorum, right?
yeah.
I wanted to play the scene on the TV in Blazing Saddles when the cow goes through when they have in the meeting, trying to lighten it up a little. I really tried to do that, I want you to know. But I was afraid one of the scenes that we wouldn't want to play would come up, so I'm not tech savvy. Our third and final candidate for interviews tonight is Michael Moresco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And they passed out some info to the search committee. Thank you. I have that. You folks are right there. Thank you.
We're gonna, can we have you at the podium if you don't mind? Sorry.
Absolutely.
We're gonna ask a series of questions, then follow-up questions, and then we will give you a couple minutes to give us a closing statement. We're gonna start with Nicole.
Hi. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Do you have any experience with debt exclusion projects and/or override questions? And if so, explain the process, please, the education to the public, and the format of the questions and the result.
Sure. So actually, I have experience with both. On debt exclusion, I was involved with a school roof project in the town of Marshfield, and I was involved with a $49.9 million debt exclusion. We built a new police station, a new DPW facility, doubled the size of our senior center to 2 seawalls. And so the difference is an override is forever. When you add that money to the base, to the levy, that's there forever. Debt exclusion goes for the term of the note. So if you do a 20-year note, debt exclusion is for the 20 years, the cost, the interest, etc. When we did the $49.9 million, it was November 19, 2019, just before COVID. So we were very fortunate because our overall interest rate at that time, when we went out to the market, we were a AA+ community. We went out for half of it, was 1.9%, 2.1, so it came down to, it was a 2%. And that note, we did 30 years. The town preferred to do a 30-year note. It's a lot of interest, but we did do that. Education, we worked with a lot of private nonprofits, because when you're in government, even though I was the town administrator, the select board, they're elected officials, in their capacity outside, they could work, but you really needed to hire. We hired a young man that was involved in a lot of political campaigns. He was the chair, Build the Better Marshfield, and we had a person join and volunteer. We ended up not having to pay for any. This person stepped up and did all of our social media. It was very important to get the message, the facts, what citizens want to know. What is this going to cost me? What are the benefits of the project? And how long will it take to be built? All of the other stuff, what's it going to look like? And it was important to, show support. You needed to have the private folks you had to raise money. You wanted to have yard signs. I'm a political person. I've been involved in many campaigns over my 40-something years in government. So, you want to, what's the message? Craft the message, get the message out there, use all the various media. We were fortunate, we had a radio station, so Build a Better Marshfield bought radio ads. We put signs up, just like you were running for the Board of Selectmen or school committee or anything like that. We had signs up, we had weekly and monthly meetings leading up to the town meeting, and then we had poll workers at the election, and it was hugely successful. And I'm proud to say that all those buildings were built on time, under budget.
Awesome.
Or at budget. I think, did I miss any, or did I get it?
No, debt
Okay.
exclusion budget.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul?
All right, so similar question. Do you have experience in formulating a town budget that required an override? If so, what was the process for educating the public, the format of the question, and what were the results of said override?
Yes, on one occasion, so in 2007, when I was running for my third term on the Select Board, we were in dire financial situation in the town of Marshfield. There hadn't been a correction to the budget since 1990, so we had gone quite a long time, but we were faced with a very similar situation that's here now. Do we make the correction? Do we maintain the level of services? Do we keep the good people that we have? Or if an override didn't pass, then you have to make cuts. So what we did is we formulated two budgets. You have to have level service, level funded. And you had to educate people what the difference is. A level funded budget is just that. You have funding to what the previous fiscal year was. A level service budget takes into consideration the deficits, and that's where you go to the polls and the people vote to make up that deficit. So you're maintaining those services at that cost. You identify what the cost is. So you can do either two things. You can have a menu option, which is what Abington is going to do, or you can have lump sum dollar. Lump sum dollar people don't like, because people like to have the ability to go to the polls and make their own decisions, go to town meeting and make their own decisions. So when we did it in 2007, myself and the chairwoman of the school committee, we worked on the override, and we did get it passed. We did lump sum dollar. That's what the community wanted. Every community is different. We'll do the same situation. Abington would have to go through the same situation. The questions have already been done, everything's done. Now it's really about getting out and educating people why it's so important to make sure that we maintain the police that are out there to protect our citizens, protect our residents at night, make sure that we have school resource officers in the school, fire department, make sure that we have to maintain the 2 ambulances, make sure that we have enough firefighters to maintain the equipment and the apparatus that we have so that we can continue to sleep at night. To make sure that we have the proper library staff, make sure that we have teachers in the classroom to teach our children. Those are important characteristics that we have to talk about, and that would be part of that education. So folks, we would hopefully organize and do the same thing. Usually some of the local unions will step up and help with that campaign apparatus piece, making sure usually people step up now. Social media is so big, it's important that we're constantly getting the message out every single day so that it's redundant. What you want people to do is say, please, stop the ads. Every time the ad comes on, I know why we need the school teachers, I know what. And then really, it's getting the people to town meeting, getting them to vote in favor of it, and then at the polls on election day, it's important they have to pass it both. If one fails, it's over. So it's that two thing, and you gotta have poll workers out there and poll checkers if possible, depending upon the amount of volunteers that you have. And then success is measured by the question passing at the ballot box in town meeting.
Thank you. Kevin?
A department head comes into your office first thing on a Monday morning and informs you that as of Friday, the department did not turn over to the treasurer the usual and required collection of checks or money, and it appears funds may be missing. The department head then informs you that one of the employees has a known gambling problem. How would you handle the situation?
First, I would ask the department head why I wasn't notified over the weekend, or if not on Friday. My hallmark is I like bad news delivered quickly. First and foremost, that's a serious situation. That's going to require an investigation. I would have a meeting with the person, the department head, sit them down, put them out on paid administrative leave immediately. Then I would begin an investigation. I would investigate by interviewing all of those individuals that had any knowledge of the subject matter, and do a report. So you interview, I like to interview all those folks first. Then the person that's out on paid administrative leave, I would bring them in. They would be notified that they have to appear at a certain time. You would tell them that they can bring union representation, and you would also tell them if they feel as though they need to bring an attorney, they can bring an attorney. We would go through the regimen of the questions with them, how did this happen? You go through this exercise because you don't want to point guilt, even though in this particular situation, someone's saying that the person has a gambling habit. You want to be very sure people have rights, and you don't want to violate those rights. That's why you go through the whole process of an investigation. You put all the pertinent facts in a report. When you go through it, you would look at, cash and checks, depending upon, checks are very easy, very traceable. If it happened in the treasurer collector's office, you'd be tallying the draws, making sure you'd start with the draws. You'd go through the checks and the receipts and the cash reports for that week. Abington, like Marshfield, has a good financial policy, so you'd be able to check the policies to make sure the person was adhering to those policies. At the conclusion of the investigation, you're going to ascertain, did the person steal funds? Was it sloppiness? Were policies not followed? Sometimes checks get stuck. You go to the cash drawer, and under the cash drawer, check was stuck to the thing. The missing check could be there. If, in fact, you found out that the funds were stolen, you can file criminal charges, and you could go down that road. If you found out it was sloppiness and there wasn't adherence to the policy, they kept too much money in the drawer, there were checks there, then you put that person on a PIP, and they have to be retrained in the policies. 7 out of 10 times you're able to rehabilitate someone that's gone astray, and they stay. Sometimes they don't improve, and it's time to let them go.
Could you just elaborate on a PIP, just for people who don't?
It's a personal improvement plan. So you would sit down with the department head and that employee, and you would go through the steps of that job. This is what they're required to do. These are the steps that you go through. If it was in the treasurer collectors, this is how you keep your drawer. This is how you scan the checks in every day. This is how you put your tally report together. All of the basic core functions. They sign an agreement that they're going to retool themselves. You sign the agreement, and you usually give them a time frame. It's usually like 3 months, 90 days, and you re-review. If something happens sooner, then that means they're really not serious about the PIP, and now you have cause to let people go. It's important when you're dealing with employees. Everything has to be documented. You don't wait to the annual review to say, hey, by the way, you haven't been following this policy. It shouldn't come to a surprise. Department heads need to stay on top of their employees. I, as the town manager or the town administrator, needs to, stay on top of the department heads to make sure. You don't want to get yourself into a situation where people are violating policies and violating laws. They're not being noted. There's no records of that. I'm a firm believer in progressive discipline. So what you do is the person gets a warning, it's usually verbal. In this day and age, you go to court and you say to someone, it's your word against theirs, so I do have a sit-down meeting with the union and the person, they get a verbal warning, but then I follow up with a letter that dictates that we had the first stage, verbal warning, here's your letter, and they have to sign it, I have them initial it, and then that goes in the file. And then you just go from there. The next time there's an issue, it's written, it's much more formal. If it happens a third time, then now you have the backup documentation that the person needs to move on.
Thank you.
Suzanne?
To piggyback on that, thank you. Tell me about what experience you have with hiring, discipline, and terminating employees.
Over my career, I've hired lots and lots of people. Like with any position, before we go out to hire somebody, I want to work with the department head to find out, what particular position it is. We take a look at what the job description is, make sure that job description is accurate. We review the pay scale, where they are in the union, which union they're going to belong to, all of that stuff. Then we would do a posting, and we would get that out there. We'd get that out into the professional journals, if they're professional journals and organizations. If you're going to hire a treasurer, you would use, treasurer's journals. The MMA has, you can go up on their website and other locations. Sometimes we go out, we do a lot now on social media, just put it out there. People, you'd be surprised, people apply for jobs now from all over the country because they sit and something looks interesting. They may like Boston, they may like Abington, Marshfield, and they'll apply for the job. So, and then you go through interview process. The thing about hiring people is that one thing I found, people that are really, really good interviewers have done a lot of interviews. So that's always gives me pause. I want to make sure that I check out the references and make sure that they're real references, they're real people. That's important to do. The next part of your question was?
Terminating personnel.
Terminating. So I've had to terminate a number of people in Marshfield alone while I was there, but people don't work out for whatever reason. You never terminate people for, if people dislike them or something. It's really based on their job performance. Do they have the prerequisite skills to do the job? Are they a good communicator if it's a position that requires them to communicate with the public? In municipal government, that is our job, is to deal with the public every day, whether good or bad. People have bad days. Sometimes they come in, they might not be happy with their tax bill might be late. So even if you're hiring clerks in those particular offices, or you're hiring department heads or wiring inspectors and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you always get the best person. You want to make sure that they're, I look for things like being self-motivated. I want people to be good communicators, hard-working, a good work ethic, and all the skills necessary for the job. If not, then they get terminated, but they have to be terminated for just cause. You have to be able to document in paper, like I had mentioned earlier, those same steps would apply when you have to terminate someone. For whatever reason, if you're getting rid of the building commissioner, you have to be able to document. I was involved in a termination of one when I was a selectman. We had a problem, and they brought one on the select board member in, and I was the lucky person that was chosen. And you were documented. They had letters from constituents articulating very well things that they thought were wrong. We then did an investigation and found out they were right. We had went out and interviewed, and we brought the person in, and we had to let that person go. But treasurer collectors, I've had to replace. Town accountants I've had to replace. Building commissioner I've had to replace. Fire chief I've had to replace. So, over the years, I've had to replace a number of folks, and you get better at it each and every time you do it. Not that it's always sad to have to part ways with people. especially if they have families and stuff. But, unfortunately, everyone has an opportunity to improve themselves. That's why I'm big on progressive discipline, because I don't want it to come as a shock where, employees think they're doing a great job and bang, they're being fired tomorrow. Well, no, it doesn't happen like that. They get notification that there's an issue, and we address the issue, and they get a verbal warning. Then, if they continue down that road and they don't make improvements, then they get the second, which is a written warning, and then they get dismissed. And the other thing is, I make it a point, every year in Marshfield, I reviewed all the department heads, because I think it's important for department heads to be interviewed. I think it's important to work with them to set objectives so that they have something to work towards. Likewise, I expect department heads then to meet with their employees once a year and to talk about expectations, to talk about if they're doing a good job, to talk about where they need some improvement. The one thing I can tell you after 44 years in government is that it's not always money that motivates people. Money does help, of course. It's, you're doing a good job. It's fantastic how much money you brought in, but we don't have any money to give you. It's not going to help you at the grocery store. But intrinsically, what I've found is all employees like to be told they're doing a good job. And not just, it's an attaboy, you're doing a good job, but spend some time and specifically zero in on some of the things that they do really well. Just like, if you bring a person in and they're being disciplined for the first time and it's, they're going to get a verbal warning, after they get the warning and you tell them, and I like to try to find something that's good that I can say, well, we have this problem, I expect you to address it, we'll get you on a PIP, but, I was also told you're very good at doing this, so if you can improve that, this will improve your work here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What is your policy of keeping the select board informed on major incidents that happen in town?
I think they have to know right away. I will tell you, some of my other boards thought I was sending way too many notifications to them, but I was a selectman, and the worst thing that can happen to any select board member is to go into the local coffee shop, the local restaurant, or Star Market on a Saturday and have a resident come up and say, do you know about this? And they don't, and they're not happy. And then I get the call. So you only make that mistake once, but I can tell you, as soon as something happens, I like to send the information out. As the board knows, I've been sending information out, so today was kind of a heavy day. There were a lot of different things going on. And over the weekend, we had the storm to contend with and the warming center. But it's important that the board know about it. It's not necessarily that you need to take any action, or we need to have a one-on-one, or we've got to put it on the agenda for the select board to discussion, take a vote, but it's really just that factor. If Miss Emery is at dropping the kids off at school or something, suddenly, a parent comes up to her and says, hey, what about this? She would need to know about that. Or, if Roger, I know Mr. Woods, the chair, likes to go to Martin's, if he's in Martin's for breakfast, when someone comes up to him and he doesn't know about it, he has a right to be upset about it. So it's really about keeping the board informed, because you are the top elected officials, and I think the residents and the people that participate know that you should know everything. So my role is to make sure that you know as much as humanly possible.
Thank you. Nicole, follow-up?
Yes. Let me see. I have two for you. Can you tell me about a time that you've changed your mind after talking to a resident and just what prompted the shift?
Let's see, a situation that I talked to a resident. A resident approached me that was upset about the parking situation. She has a very big family, so anyone that's ever been to Marshfield, Wrexham, Brant Rock, in the summer our population goes up about 40,000 people, and a woman had approached me about parking, and she was very upset that some of her cars, her relatives were down, they got tagged, And, she was absolutely opposed to that, and, asked me what I could do. And, I did explain to her what you would tell her. Well, first of all, those two cars were tagged because they were parked on both sides of the hydrant. So that would be under any circumstances, no, I said. But, the chief's very good about, unless somebody calls, so I talked to the chief, and what I was told is they normally will not tag unless somebody calls, because they understand, the houses are on 4,500 to 5,000 square foot lots. It's not a lot of frontage. You get 10 relatives over every household, it's pretty tough. So I went back to the woman and I told her, as long as they're not parking in the hydrants, you have a nice lawn, but if you have that many people, they're gonna have to park in the driveway and on the lawn. Stay away from the hydrants. You can park in the street, but, try to be nice to your neighbor, and she was fine with that, as long as police weren't going out of their way to tag during the summer.
Thank you. And then this can be as specific or non-specific as you want, but you have a lot of experience. In your career, have you made any mistakes that you've sort of learned from, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, sure. You make mistakes all the time. I made a mistake with a major department head one time. I don't want to get into too many specifics, but it was a major position in the town. And it wasn't me, but I take responsibility, because as the town administrator, the town manager, take responsibility. We sat on the committee. The person mentioned all of the key components of that position that I thought was important to be addressed, and other members felt the same way. We checked out all the references. The references came back well. No one said anything bad. But there was like a gut feeling. And normally, I act on my gut feeling, but for whatever reason, I thought this person was a really good fit and would take the position to the next. But unfortunately, it didn't, and the person ended up leaving.
Thank you.
Kevin?
If I could, you've addressed the fact that you were on the Board of Selectmen, and I had asked one of the other candidates, because I viewed it as important, because as managers, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that what happens on this side of the table. And I think you've adequately addressed that in terms of your experience on the Board of Selectmen. But I want to hone in on something else on your resume. When you were Assistant Secretary of the Commonwealth, had you had, in that position, did you work with the legislature at all in terms of programs for the office and generally on legislative matters?
Yes, I did. As the Assistant Secretary, I helped the Secretary run the office. Specifically, I was also the lobbyist, the business agent for the office. I was responsible for working to craft the budget, working to get the budget through the legislative process, working with House Ways and Means, Senate Ways and Means, working with the executive branch of government. Once we got our line items through and passed in the budget, it was important to make sure the governor wasn't going to veto anything, so I had to work with the administration. I drafted legislation, so I had a lot of close work with various speakers and Senate presidents and legislative leadership.
How about the congressional delegation?
Congressional delegation, we did work with. I didn't have a lot. Secretary Galvin was very hands-on. He dealt with the congressmen and the United States senators directly himself, but I would attend meetings, but on those particular meetings, he would handle those.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Paul?
All right, so residents send you or emails you a complaint, they've had a disagreement with a certain department. What would your turnaround timeline be to get it, to respond to the resident and then try and see through the complaint?
Well, I would respond to the resident within 24 hours after getting that I would investigate and look into the alleged complaint. And then, after I sent that out to the person, then I would call the department head, share the complaint with them. We would go through, look at the validity of it. If in fact, someone was rude and stuff like that, I usually asked the employee to write a note, apologizing to the person. Those usually the complaints are they were treated poorly, they didn't like the attitude that the person had. I had a situation where we had, this woman owns like 7 houses in Marshfield, and she came to write her check, and, she wanted to, for whatever reason, wanted to write out one check, and that's entirely correct. She can do that. She didn't tally up her bills, so she asked the young woman at the window could she just tally up her taxes on the 7 houses? She could just look them up under her name, and, well, if you wanted to do that, and she wrote verbatim, so as soon as she said it, I even knew the employee that said it. I called her up, and, I said, I apologize, that's not the way we do business in town. And I called the treasurer, we had to sit down with that individual. And that person was just having a bad day on that particular, and that person was willing to call. She actually called and apologized to her on the phone, so. Sometimes they're more complicated. We've had issues with, I've had to mediate issues with a constituent calling me complaining that they can't bring their dog into town hall. I said, oh, that is true. I said, we have a sign on the outside of town hall that only service dogs. Well, you can't ask me if my dog's a service dog. I said, well, that's true. But I said, most people have the harness on, and they have that little certificate that says that that's a dog. Well, I carry my dog. It's a very small dog, and I want to bring the dog into town hall. I said, unfortunately, dogs aren't allowed into town hall. That's just the way it is. I said, what is the reason that you want to bring your dog? I try to find out what the thing is, and it was just, she just insisted on wanting to bring her dog. She goes, well, what's going to happen if you're not there and I bring the dog in? I said, I don't want to speculate. I said, I'm just telling you that that's what the law. Sometimes you just have to tell people, but it's when a resident complains, everyone has a right to complain, and everyone has a bad day, including myself. I'm not going to tell the board I'm never going to have a bad day. I try not to. I make sure I'm highly motivated every single time I come into the office, whether here, Marshfield, or the Secretary of State's office. But inevitably, we're all human. The thing is to recognize the mistake and correct it.
Everybody all set?
Can I ask one more? Sorry.
Certainly.
Just since you have been here, what do you see as the top challenge for Abington, or what we're facing, and do you have any plans you can think of on how to address a challenge?
No, it's a great question. I mean, yes, first and foremost is finances. Without having the finances in order, we cannot do anything. That's going to impede our ability to protect our community, both with fire and police and DPW, educate our students. So that's a moral imperative that we'll have to work on and get addressed. It's not something that we can simply do as the select board or as the town. It takes the community. That's why it is a community. But it's up to us to educate folks on why it's so important that we have that money. Anyone that's truly involved and goes around, they know that, we don't have staff falling over people here. I haven't been in the schools, but I'm sure that there are challenges that the schools have to face. I know, with speaking with Dr. Michelle, she told me about the different dialects, and, there's a lot of Portuguese-speaking students, and it's important for their educational purposes that we have to have paraprofessionals and teachers that speak that language fluently, so we have to pay for that. No one works for nothing. But it's really, it's the finances. Fire department, making sure that we have ample money to run the ambulances, making sure that we can, ambulance breaks down or it's at the end of life, we got to make sure that we have funds to be able to purchase another one. Those are all important things. Library, we have a beautiful library. I spent some time with the librarian. Debbie did a great job. I went and I actually met with the Board of Library Trustees, and I was told at that meeting that they're the largest elected body in the town, which they are. I did look it up, and we had a great meeting. They're very committed. I think there were hundreds of years of experience between the board that was there, and they talked about all the wonderful things that they do for our children. So that's the challenge. Now, how do we get more revenue is the answer. So one of the things in the short term, so that all of those services I just briefly went through are not harmed to a point where they're actually going to end up harming our residents. The only option is, doing a override. It's the only way we can get, under the law, under Prop 2.5, That's the only way that you can get additional revenue in the short term. Long term, we plan to do things. In Marshfield in 2018, I went out to bid to do solar array on our cap landfill. And we went out to bid. We had 8 prospective companies. We hired the company that gave us the best presentation in their RFP and the price and what they were going to do. And then it took us about a year and a half with the lawyers to come to a written agreement. Then I was at the mercy of a private elected DPW in Marshfield, its own board. They don't answer to the select board. And they didn't want anything on their landfill. So it took a while to negotiate with them. But to this day, it's sad. I feel, it was a failure. They're still trying to get the DPW to acquiesce. That would be $1.1 million a year for the next 20 years. Because all you're doing is you're leasing out space. Marshfield, like Abington, we had aggregate electric, so we didn't need a reduction in the electric cost. We needed revenue to fund all of the same departments that we're talking about funding here in Abington. We also, to expand that, at the time, we were going to put photovoltaics out on all the municipal roofs. You have to make sure the roof is good for the next 25 years, because when they put those units up on the roof, they're good for 20 to 25 years. On our new buildings, the police station in particular, we put carports. Carports are great. We ran into a roadblock even with that. That would have generated potentially another $1 million, or the company would replace the roofs on the school. They put a membrane. I'm not a scientist, but they brought samples. We hired 2 other companies, because I'm always leery when you have a company that does photovoltaics and now suddenly they have experts in roof. Now, it's not that far a stretch, because they do put them on a roof, so it's their equipment, so they probably want to make sure there's something, but it's important that you protect the public. You want to have someone that you're hiring tell you that that's good. This liquid that they poured hardened like a porcelain, and if anyone knows anything about flat roofs, as soon as you walk on it, there can be a stone, a pebble, all of the HVAC stuff is up there, has to be serviced all the time, filters, people dropping screwdrivers, that's how you get the holes and water leaks. But they were willing to, you would get less money on your annual lease payment, but they would do the roof and they would pour this membrane, and then they would put the photovoltaics on top of it. And a group of parents somehow read somewhere that photovoltaic units would cause brain damage to their children in the schools that had the units mounted on the roof. Now, 3 years prior to that, the school superintendent and the school committee voted to allow the units to be put on their buildings, but this group of like 10 parents or so led the charge, so it never happened. But, those are things to explore. That's certainly on a cap landfill, that's something that very quickly you do an RFP, you have companies bid. It's not a lot of construction. The units come, they put like cement shoes on them, because that's how they're ballasted on the ground, has to be the right facing. And, we have to look at different things like that. We're lean, like I said, if the override doesn't pass, then we'll be faced to make those cuts in the various departments. So we always have to look at cost savings. We have to look at, can we share services with other communities to get costs down, like we do with dispatch. I think we do dispatch with Holbrook. Holbrook does it for a number of communities. Maybe we can do animal control officer the same way, or veteran services the same way. I'm not saying that that's what we should do. I'm just saying that, I think when you're in a tough find, it's like in your house, when you add up and you see your check, well, okay, my checkbook, I get X amount of money, where am I going to make cuts? You have to look at, or do I get a second or third job to bring in more revenue? So when you want to grow the revenue, then you have to look at, maybe sharing some of the services with other communities to lessen the blow to our particular community.
Thank you.
Everybody all set? You want to take a couple minutes to give us
Yes.
a closing statement?
Thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed my time here as your interim. I've got to meet a lot of great people. We have some really fantastic department heads. The employees, everyone's been extremely welcoming. I had the opportunity, Abington celebrates. As soon as I got the call about being the interim, I got involved in the community. That's what I like to do. I, make myself available for nighttime meetings, any meetings that I have to go to, but it's important to be out in the community. Went to the UCC church things, to the concert. I went to, I saw the police and fire on the great parade that they did with Santa Claus and with Scrooge and the elves and all that. I was at Walmart when they did their toy collection. So it's a wonderful community. I like the friendliness, and I think I can bring my years of experience to help overcome the challenges that are here. So, and I come every day motivated, as I said, and I'm happy to dig in if you'd like me to. So thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Comments by the board?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think, first of all, thanks to the search committee for giving us 3 qualified candidates. Clearly, if we listened to the interviews and, each of them brings their own experiences to the table. I think in my mind, the question then becomes is, how do you factor out? Now, taking aside the fact that Mr. Maresco is the interim, and he's only been an interim for a few weeks, so set that aside. I think we have to look at their experiences in their totality, and how does that factor into at least my decision as to how I want to vote on this matter. In looking at all the applications and going through the interviews, in my mind, it falls to experience. Experience not only as a town administrator manager. Some of the candidates have been select board members, so they understand the intricacies with that, and others have had experience in the mayoral form of government. What I'm looking for, too, is somebody who has had experience dealing with the legislature and with building debt exclusion in terms of building construction facilities. We're in the process now of constructing a fire headquarters and DPW facility that we were able to get on a debt exclusion that the people did approve for. So factoring all that in, I'm going to make a motion to appoint Michael Maresco as the town manager, subject to successful contract negotiations, and to authorize the chairman to negotiate a contract to bring it back to the board for ratification. We've got a special meeting on Thursday, so I would ask, first of all, if the chairman, if that's doable in your mind. I know you've got tomorrow and what have you, so I would make that as a motion.
Motion's made. Any further discussion by the board?
I want to thank all the applicants. We had incredible applicants for this.
I agree.
Coming with all the experience that we wanted. And Roger and I were on the board, so we've got a little bit more than here. It was very challenging to pick 3 candidates, 3 amazing candidates. It's also going to be hard to pick the new town manager for this board. My experience, because I was a department head, then a selectman, so I was the worker bee coming into this, I really wanted more conversations with the town manager as a department head for 13 years here, and going through 4 or 5 town managers. We had never had a review as department heads, never. There was no town manager that reviewed the department heads to figure out, our needs, their needs, and I did like the fact that all of the candidates were willing to do that, but I really did, and there's other things, having relationships with the State House, having relationships with this ever-changing environment. For me, it was, I think Michael would be better set for this town, Mr. Maresco. That's just my opinion.
Nicole, anything?
Yes, I think,
I second it. I'm sorry.
So, I was gonna say, is that your second?
Yes, I'm so sorry. It's like, go on. Sorry,
so
Nicole.
I went into this with a complete open mind. I didn't know anybody beforehand. I listened to everybody thoroughly. I also think, just given the times of Abington, I really weight a big part of my decision on the experience and what I think we're going to need. I think, I know Joe's left, he has some great things to offer. I just hesitate on the not having the town manager experience. I think you both have that, but just based on some of the answers tonight and some other things, I think that likely Michael would be the best fit, and I find it to be a really difficult decision. I hire for a living at my other job, and it's always a tough thing. I find it tough to do it right after interviewing people. I usually interview people 2 or 3 times or take like 3 days to make a decision, but having to make a decision tonight, I would go with Michael.
Paul?
We voting or?
No? We yapping?
No, I mean, I think all 3 applicants were great, but same thing, I'm gonna say the same thing Nicole said and that Suzanne said. The experience. Michael has the experience, he was town administrator for, was it 10 years? 7, I'm sorry. And I think we need somebody with that experience, and just some of the answers to his questions, I've seen it over the past month that what you've said, I've seen it in real time, you've done the stuff. We had the storm over the past weekend, and we knew everything in real time, what was gonna happen before it happened, so.
I just want to say, the candidates were excellent. I appreciate everybody coming in, and I want to be a little more upfront about where I'm at. So we have a strong town manager form of government, and I'm going to be honest with you. We need a town manager that's going to come in and start kicking some ass. That's my opinion. I'm not speaking for the board. We have areas in this town that need to be addressed. I've been on the board a year and a half, and Kevin's been on longer, Suzanne's been on longer, Nicole and Paul, we're in here every day slugging it out as selectmen. So my position has been that I want a town manager in here that is a strong town manager, that will run the town, that will, work with the department heads, that isn't afraid to discipline when it needs to be done. I've been screaming for a year and a half that we're in a tough financial position, and we're in a tough financial position. But we also have other areas in town besides the financial position that need to be addressed. I'm talking as a guy that, I'm a small business owner, and I'm frustrated by not being able to act as a selectman because of how municipal government works. So my position has been to get, as we did with Chief Bonnie for the police department, we've extended the contract for the fire chief, Jack Glynn, who I had the honor to appoint 30 years ago when I was on the board, and the same with right now having the opportunity to bring a town manager in. All the candidates were excellent. I want a town manager that has experience, that has been through it, and that is why I am for Mr. Maresco. So the board has made a motion and a second. If everybody's all set, sorry about my little speech, but we need to get to work. So that's why we're pushing. I want to address too, I'm sorry, I'm on kind of a rant. We pushed to get this done because of the financial problems we have. So we're up here, we're elected officials, the towns, we answer to the townspeople, and we owe them to work through these problems, to work with all of the departments, and we needed to bring somebody in that can do that. The interviews went very well, the search committee worked together very well, and I, again, think that Mr. Maresco is the best person for the position in town. So, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote. Nicole? Say yes?
Yes.
Paul? Kevin?
Yes.
Suzanne? Chairman
Yes.
says yes. Vote is unanimous. Congratulations.
Congratulations, thank you.
Now, the real,
Comments, Roger?
I'm sorry,
Will you take public comments?
no.
And Angie, I just want to say thank you again. I do think
Thank
you
you
have
Thank you,
a
Angie.
wealth of
much.
experience. I think you have great experience. It's a hard decision.
Thank you.
So the real important issue tonight is before us now, and that would be discussion and vote on Board of Health proposal to create animal licensing regulations. I noticed that Mr. Maresco did not speak about bringing chickens into Town Hall. I think that was on purpose. So, Mr. Donovan asked for this to be on the agenda. I'll start with him.
I did. First of all, a little bit of history, just for those that don't know. For the past 40 years, I've raised animals. I've had chickens, turkeys, pigs, cows, sheep, goats, llamas, alpacas. I've delivered calves and lambs. I am very passionate about this, and I'm not going to apologize for it whatsoever. I take, and I'll give you a little bit of history. When I was town administrator in Kingston, we had a similar problem, and I was able to convince the town to adopt the right to farm and make Kingston a right to farm community. In this particular case, the Board of Health has proposed, and I understand their reasonings, or at least what was articulated to me from the chairman, is that the State Department of Public Health wanted information concerning the bird flu. Now, I've done this for 40 years. I don't even have a goldfish now, just for clarification. And I know backwards and forwards about animal husbandry. In terms of the avian flu issue as it relates to the State Department of Public Health, I can tell you that when I was Plymouth County Commissioner, I was in charge of the County Cooperative Extension Service. And I worked with the Extension Service for many, many years. They are a plethora of information for towns as well as for individuals and farmers. They keep in close contact not only with the farming community but with the feed and grain stores as to what is out there in terms of particular problems. Now, that's on that issue, and I'm going to get into this a little bit further. The second issue people have been complaining about is rat problems. Well, there's been a rat problem around for years. I have baited my barn I've lived on my current property for 32 years, and I continue to bait it even though I do not have animals. Rats are inherent. When I was just filling in as town administrator in Hanson a few months ago, somebody came in, there was a town building, the woman said, "There's rats in there." The health agent said, "Well, there's a food source." I said, "There is not a food source. This is October. They're coming in to nest. They want a place. The weather is changing." I said, "Go down to Hanson Grain, buy a bait bar for $15, break it up, put it in the thing, and within a few days, your problem's going to go away." Now, as it relates to the Board of Health and their proposed regulations, we as selectmen don't have the authority. The Board of Health is elected. They're clothed with the authority under the statute to make regulations as it relates to a broad spectrum of things, in particular this. I personally, and I feel as though everybody's entitled to an opinion. I feel I'm entitled to my opinion, and I'm going to articulate that opinion. And I know some people are upset at that. Well, with or without your approbation, you're going to hear me. I think the Board of Health is wrong in their approach. I think it's too heavy-handed in their regulations. They're proposing, and granted they have to have a hearing and they haven't voted on anything, full disclosure, that they're going to require people, that no people in the town of Abington can have animals unless they receive a permit from the Board of Health. It's in the proposed regulations. This is what has been advertised and posted. I can read from you from section 4. No person shall own or keep or allow any other person to own or keep any animal on real property in the town of Abington unless said animals are registered with the Board of Health on an annual basis in accordance with this regulation. In doing so, you have to submit your name, address, email, telephone number, location where the animals are housed, number of species, And then you're required to submit a feed maintenance plan, a manure maintenance plan, and a vaccination maintenance plan. It is complete and utter overkill. Abington started out as a farming community. I would submit to you that the Board of Health is creating regulations that will have a financial impact on the town itself. Who is going to administer this? We have a limited, we just heard, we have limited ability for finances. In order to enact the fines that they're proposing, up to a $300 fine on a third offense, you have to go into district court and have a judge or a court clerk magistrate enforce those fines. In order for the town to enforce that, you need town council to go in there. The purview of town council and the health agent falls under the town manager. I think this is setting the town up for additional financial obligations that we do not have. Notwithstanding, I'm deathly opposed to government interference in people's right to farm. I have, even though I don't have any animals now, I feel I've done it all of my adult life, and I will fight till the bitter end, on this issue, because I feel as though people have a right to do on their property what they deem fitting and proper. If their kids want to go into the 4-H program and they want to come home and raise a few chickens, then why the hell do they have to come to a town agency to get permission, submit a feed plan, submit a manure plan, submit a vaccination plan to have 6 chickens? One of the comments when they were trying to promulgate these regulations, a member of the Board of Health made, it didn't make it into the final draft, was maybe we should have them identify the chickens. Well, kindly tell me how the hell you do that, because I've been doing this for 40 years and I don't know. If I have 12 Rhode Island Reds, they all look the same. I just don't know how the hell you accomplish that task. I vaccinated animals. I know the intricacies of this. I just think it's the wrong approach. In my mind, I think the Board of Health should be focusing in on education in terms of the RAP program, looking at baiting in terms of that, and in overall, doing a public education standpoint. In terms of the Department, if the Department of Public Health wants information on avian flu, I am going to submit to you that they probably have that information already with the Cooperative Extension Service through UMass Amherst and working in conjunction with the feed stores. If they want that information, then let them get it themselves. We have been faced, the governor in her budget has only filed an increase of roughly 2.5%, I believe it was, for unrestricted local aid, which means the town of Abington is only going to see an increase, quick math, of maybe $50,000 or $60,000.
That is correct.
Over last year. We don't have the money. That's number one. Number two, I think it's a government overreach. It's an infringement on the rights of the people of the town to do what they want on their property. And I don't think every answer in society rests with the government. From that standpoint, clearly the Board of Health is going to have to keep an open mind. You're going to have the public hearing. You're going to have to listen to testimony. I had posted on Facebook, and I have sent already my comments into the Board of Health. I'm not going to show up at the meeting because you've heard enough of me. If people are interested, I would urge you to submit your comments in writing so the Board of Health can peruse them in writing, and it'll maybe cut down on the amount of people that you have to hear from that evening. And I would just ask everybody to be respectful, obviously. In fairness to them, they have not made a decision. These are regulations that are proposed. They're having the hearing on it, but from my standpoint, I think they're wrong, and I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Health go on record and ask the town manager to file a written comment with the Board of Health that the Board of Selectmen is opposed to the regulations on several fronts, one being from a financial interest. We don't have the money for enforcement. The town council would have to enforce the provisions of the fine structure, and the health agent would be charged with administering the program. And when we have a reduction in staff already there because of our financial situation. And lastly, I have asked the chairman for a future meeting of the Board of Selectmen to put on our agenda to see if we will submit a article to town meeting to make Abington a right-to-farm community, and let the people of the town determine, at town meeting assembled, let the voters make a determination if they wish Abington to be a right-to-farm community. And therefore, I would ask and implore the Board of Health to put off any further consideration of this regulation unless and until the people of the town have had the opportunity to render their decision on it. These regulations, as proposed, if voted, would take effect immediately according to the posting. That's my motion.
Can we, just since we have so many people here, are we going to hear from anyone who showed up for this?
Yeah, we're going to recognize some people. Anybody on the board have anything else to say on this?
So, say the Board of Health decides to enact regulations, and then we still go forward with trying to make Abington right to farm, what would happen then?
I don't know.
With the regulations?
Yeah, I mean, well, it becomes convoluted. I think you've got a very convoluted structure here in that the Board of Health has the authority to do so. A right-to-farm community, it's basically saying you have the right to farm. It gives you a mechanism to try and mitigate any complaints of neighbors. The spreading of manure, as they try to address in their regulations, is not considered a nuisance, in that regard. So I think there's a lot here that has to shake out and be debated in full, and I think the community as a whole should have the opportunity to do that at town meeting, quite frankly. I don't think the Board of Health should be rushing into this matter. I think their efforts should be, again, on addressing the rat issue in terms of education, baiting, and what have you, and working with the Cooperative Extension Service. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it.
So
Go ahead, Nicole.
I definitely want to hear from some people. I would love to hear from, I see Joe here. I would love his input. I know people from the Board of Health here. I have since learned, I had a very long talk with Aaron. I thought that the document we were looking at that was 7 pages, I'll admit, I thought that was, and I told Aaron, I thought that was very ridiculous. It was very long. I thought 7 pages worth of rules for farm animals was too much, and I didn't agree with a lot that was on it. But my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's not the final document, and it's going to have many changes, just so people know that.
Well, hold on that. They posted a public hearing based on what they posted. They haven't debated. So one member may say that, but if the Board of Health has not debated the issue yet, so in terms of that, the only information we can go on is what is posted. So from that standpoint, that may be one member's opinion, but collectively, they haven't heard the public on it. They can't formulate an opinion until such time as the public has opined on the issue and they've had the opportunity to debate the question.
Correct. No, I agree, and I told Aaron that I, as it was in front of me, disagreed with it. There are some things that I do think, as someone who had rats that literally got into my car, I do think that there's certain things that can be addressed without maybe having all these rules in place, or things like, no exotic animals in the town. There's things like that that I do not like on there. But as you said, it's what we're looking at. So if what we're looking at, the 7 pages with all the red changes, I would disagree with that, and that is not something I would go for. But I know, I do hope and think that there will be some changes to it. I hope.
If I may, I want to recognize some people in the crowd. I'm going to be up front with you. I'm not spending an hour on this, so I can be the bad guy. It's,
Well, we don't have the decision.
no, I know,
made,
but
so,
I want to give them, the people, they've come up here,
Yeah, that's
posted,
fine.
I want to give them an opportunity.
And I just want to say, I always go back to the governing factor. I would like the town to vote on these things. I don't agree with some of these. I don't like government into my home, that's my opinion, and into what I'm doing, but I did have chickens for a very short period of time, and I didn't like it, so I got rid of them. But I always like the people to come up and vote on these decisions. I mean, it's your town, you should be able to vote on it, and to push this through and not really have a whole discussion on it is a strong issue with me. But that's...
And I will recognize people so they can speak, but I think it's social engineering, goes back to the NIP things. I see, I had chickens and ducks, I got rid of the ducks because they pooped in my pool all the time, and had kept the chickens, and then I got rid of them years ago when I moved. I live in North Abington, up by the post office, there's rats everywhere up there. There isn't anybody around me that has any animals. Nobody, not one person. So I pay the pest guy, and he comes, and we fill the rat traps, and that's what we do. But the rats that are up in North Abington, in my opinion, are not because my next door neighbor has, chicken or ducks or goats or swans. So that being said, who would like to come up and speak? Aaron, you want to speak? And first, let me say thank you for coming up.
Yep.
Because you didn't need to, so I want to acknowledge that, it was on there and you took the time to come up, so.
Of course.
Please continue.
Yes, thank you. Aaron Christian, 222 High Street, Chair of the Board of Health. I will be the first to tell you, I also disagree with the regulations that are there. Just want to point that out. What everybody sees is the result of us sending a draft regulation that we've been working on for well over 2 years to Town Council for review, and anything in red line you see in that on the regulation are changes that Town Council has suggested to us. So when Nicole mentions that I had said there will probably be several changes, typically the Board of Health receives those changes, and Town Council has in the past put Harbor Master on our regulations, and we've had to make changes. I anticipate that to happen here, and that's what I was indicating to her. So I would encourage people to really keep that in mind. November 17th, we had a meeting, for example, that we met with Joe Kenny. He gave a lot of great insight to some of the barn permit versus animal regulation that had come about. And one of the things we'd come up to with a consensus is that we would not ban wild and exotic animals, which is what that regulation says, added in red line after we submitted it to Town Council. But we would rather Town Council language also be the ones that are out in the public for public hearing, and we've gotten a lot of phenomenal feedback. So I really want to emphasize that the Board of Health is not out to get your chickens, not out to get your animals. We never have been, and I encourage you to look at all of the meetings that we've had about this. This came about from the Public Health Excellence Program, which is SAFE 2.0, the State Action for Public Health Excellence. Did a capacity assessment in 2024, determined there were several areas that we were lacking in terms of public health enforcement and what the new standards would be. One of those specifically being stables, which you may recall was voted on at town meeting, as well as the NIP ban was. When we moved forward with that to make sure that we were in compliance with those standards. Us being in compliance with those standards pretty much dictate what kind of grant access we have, what type of funding is going to be available through SAFE 2.0. So we're really keeping that in mind. How can we best work through those standards? How can we meet those standards? How can we provide the health department tools to meet those standards? Some of the things you see in the regulations, and again, I don't necessarily agree with all the things that are worded in there with town council. I'm sure that other board members will probably feel the same way, but again, I'm speculating. We're trying to give our health department tools to, if there is a nuisance, to go a bet and work through, that Chris can then call somebody and have a conversation and educate them, because now we have a phone number we can call of somebody that is an animal owner. Instead of knocking on someone's door and saying, your neighbor's got rats in their yard and they're complaining it's you, what's going on? That's not fair. We don't believe that's fair. So we want to provide that opportunity, find better avenues for that. Thank you, everybody, for submitting all of their comments. This is obviously, in the 2 years that we've been working on it, we've only had Ellen Delaney be in the audience of a Board of Health meeting, and we've gotten more feedback in the past 2 weeks about anything that we're doing. And this is valuable feedback, valuable information that I know I'm taking into consideration, and I guarantee my other Board of Health members are doing the same. So I'm happy to answer any questions about process, how we got there from the Board of Selectmen, but we meet tomorrow night at 6 o'clock in Buckley Room down the hall. We're going to be having a discussion about this, and I encourage people to be there.
Okay, just so I understand.
Yep.
You're not formulating any opinions unless and until you have the public hearing, so
Correct.
that people have the right to opine on that.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why, as Nicole had stated, I believe that there will be changes. There will be no changes suggested tomorrow night on my behalf, and I'm sure the board will not do the same. We may have some ideas of things that may not be in there, and after we have that public hearing, we'll start to make those decisions, and like I said, likely cuts from that.
We're just out of curiosity, because of the interest in this, have you thought about moving the meeting to this room only because if you do get a crowd, and that's why I've encouraged people to submit it in writing, so you're not deluged. If you do get a crowd and they can't fit in that room, it's a violation of the open meeting law. So I hope you've perhaps...
Yeah, so it's just set at the Buckley Room because that's what we had on Monday, because you folks were in here. So if the space is available and we're able to move, it's not a problem.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else?
All set?
I'm all set.
Aaron, thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to speak on this matter? Sure, of course, come on up. Can't speak on town manager stuff, but you can on chickens.
Yeah, Mike Lavery, 238 Washington Street. I just want to say one thing about like transparency in this situation. You stated, Kevin, that they were trying to name their chickens, and that's going to take time for us to count them all. When that was clearly said as a joke, but you're presenting it as factual information that they said. So when people watch this, they're going to think that's really something that we're trying to have people vote on, which it seems like just truth to kind of sway people's public opinion. I just wanted that on the record.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's the way I took it, so, but the understanding is in the ear of the beholder. You
understand.
Saw something different, I didn't, so.
And I do think they're doing a great job, and I think Chris, he grinds himself to the bone and stuff. I do think it's a disappointment that we got rid of the health nurse. I think having another body might help, but I understand the budget issues. I just think...
We're all set with that. Has nothing to do with the
Okay.
topic. See you later.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm kind of heavy-handed, but,
No, that's okay, I understand.
I don't like that. You come up to talk for one thing and you go off course. You're not a rookie at this.
I thought
Who's
we were-
next? Enough. Yes, ma'am.
Katie Van Nest, 193 Colonial Road. Mr. Donovan, I was the one who made that statement. I'm sure you're referring to me, and I just want to clarify it was a joke. Obviously, we're not going to name and specify every single chicken, sir. And I'd also just like to go on record as saying I'm very disappointed in the way that you have managed this. I didn't like how you made an uproar on Facebook. I'm just disappointed with the way you presented yourself, and I wanted to say that as a community member. You clearly are very passionate about this topic, and I know that you are in and out of this building on a weekly basis, if not bi-weekly basis. You've seen our agendas posted. Why have you never come to any of the meetings and spoken to us directly? The way you went about this is really disappointing.
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't think I should have an opinion.
No, I value your
object-
opinion,
Let me finish.
and I wish
Let me
that you
finish,
would
please.
come to the
Let me finish,
meetings.
Let him finish, please. Then we'll let you say what you want.
I have a right, as a resident and an elected official, to have an opinion, because it may be contrary to what you think. Now you're trying to come up here and you're upset with me because I have an opinion. I'm not upset with you for you having an opinion. And this is where I guess I have a real problem with. People in this town, that's why it's called a democracy. Just because you disagree with me, you don't have to come up here and say you're disappointed in me. This is not right. I specifically said when I gave my comments that the Board of Health has not opined on this matter, and I urged everybody to be respectful. I would ask the same of you.
You misunderstand me. I do respect your
Okay,
opinion.
thank you.
You're so rude. I do value your opinion, and as someone who has had animals, for the same reason I so valued that Joe came to our meeting and, provided us with his insight and information, I wish that you had done the same instead of going the way you did. That's all.
Well, I disagree. I have a right, it's a free country.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
I am Krista Manna at 641 Summer Street. I am actually here on behalf of my daughter, who is currently at swim practice. She is the, as this document states, the keeper of our chickens. And she has written a statement if you would like to.
Sure, we'll hand them right out.
I believe she, yeah, I believe
need one.
Yep.
she emailed it to us.
Oh, yeah, we have this.
We got that
Yep, we do
today.
have this.
Okay.
Very comprehensive. Thank you.
Yes.
This is what happens when your kids have a snow day. And she is very passionate about chicken keeping. She has been, before we even got them, she did significant amounts of research on the best way and the best health benefits and ways to keep chickens in a healthy manner and environment. And so, if you don't mind, I will read this statement. My name.
It's rather,
What's that?
it's a rather lengthy statement. Can
Can you paraphrase?
Yes, I will
Only, and I'm only,
paraphrase.
just so you, I'm only
Yes.
saying it because we're not the
Yes,
one
I
that are voting on
understand.
the thing. Please feel
There
free.
are many items in this particular document that are very vague and do not actually call out exactly what the requirements will be. And it basically puts the onus on whoever is the inspector and depends on their particular bias. That puts they may not know the very particulars of your specific animal that you have on your property. So they may have a misunderstanding or a uneducated opinion about a particular topic that they are inspecting, and that can be very problematic. It also, specifically for chicken keepers, there is language in here that specifically says that they need to be penned up at all times. That actually is very detrimental to the health of a chicken. And it also says that they will not be allowed to free range unless you are there specifically watching them. Which also for individuals who have full-time jobs, that is next to impossible, because chickens are required to have a healthy life, ideally, according to medical research, need to be free-ranging and outside for a minimum of 6 hours a day. So unless somebody has 6 hours a day to suddenly carve out during daylight hours to be standing and watching your chickens, it is physically impossible to actually comply with this. There's a couple, I want to read at least her final thoughts.
Sure. No, go ahead.
Yeah. This rule violates the freedoms of backyard animal owners to an unreasonable degree. It is government overreach that is vague and expensive, especially for people with smaller number of animals. It is discouraging and severely raising the barrier to entry for anyone who would want to take care of any of these kinds of animals, such as individuals wanting to participate in 4-H clubs. Some of these regulations are detrimental to the health and welfare of chickens in particular. This draft in its current state is vague and open to far more overreaching definitions that are mentioned here, and is extremely open to the potential bias of inspectors or board members. It is clear that there is a fundamental misunderstanding of both the financial burden and the strain on time management this draft would place on small backyard animal owners.
Well said.
Thank you.
And that was from my 15-year-old daughter.
Very good.
This lady right here, raise her hand first, and then I'll get to you.
Hello, Carol Dolan, 16 Pinecrest Road. I would like to amplify what my colleague Aaron has said. We are not finished with our opining, Kevin. And we really, I felt like I was in a parallel universe, because people are speaking to parts of a document that we didn't really write. And so it's not done yet. So I would ask people here, people with strong opinions, people with, to give us some time to take on board the comments, take on board public hearing. We've gotten help from folks around town, and from other towns who have animal regulations that are definitely stronger than our intention. And I think it's really important to remember what our intentions are, is the public health of the community. Animals can be dangerous, they can be a nuisance, but they can also be very rewarding, and I'm a dog owner. I don't mind registering my dog every year. It doesn't prevent me from having a dog. And it shouldn't prevent your daughter from having a chicken, or a bunch of chickens. And so I think everybody just needs to take a breath and give us, as a board, an independent board from this board, the opportunity to work through this in a way that is amenable to the town. And if it means it goes to town meeting, and that's what gets decided, well, okay, but we need some time to work through it all. And I would ask again for the select board, for the community members, to pay attention to that. That document that you have been looking at is not the one that I was involved with. And I understand your strong feelings, and I never knew you had llamas, but I'm just gonna quit now. But I am a public health professional, and I feel like we're not doing this to overreach. We're doing this for the health and quality of life and of our community. We're not trying to prevent animal ownership. We're not trying to name chickens. We are trying to look out for emergency preparedness issues and things like the capriciousness of viruses jumping from animals to humans. You know, we all register around rabies, and that's kept the public safe for decades, right? So that's all I have to say. Don't want to keep you from your dinner, because
Thank you.
I'm getting
Carol,
angry.
you and I have known each other since the first grade,
Yeah,
so
first
I
grade.
value your opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, one second, we'll recognize this lady first.
Hi, my name's Megan Gundel, 106 Rockland Street. I am a fourth-generation farmer, not a public speaker, so bear with me. I'm an active member of the Massachusetts Farm Bureau, and I have been in touch with them regarding these regulations. There is 2 MGLs that they want to make sure you guys recognize, because there's points that affect these Massachusetts laws. There is Chapter 40A, Section 3, known as the Dover Amendment, which basically outlines our structures and buildings for our animals. And then there is Chapter 111, Section 125A, which covers the nuisance and the noises we make and the odors we make, and it can't quite be regulated down to a town level. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
My voice has got to start to break up. So, yes, they do need to wrap around those laws most significantly. I do know the town already has in place a bylaw that directly goes against the Dover Amendment, because it recently affected me with a new barn build, where the town says we can only build a barn that is 10% of our household dwelling, and that is technically not allowed by the Mass Law Dover Amendment section. So my other point is with rats, I know that can be a problem. I know as a farmer, we regulate that as much as we can. It's a huge financial burden to us to feed rats, squirrels, the whole 9 yards. But when our neighbors have 15 bird feeders, what are we supposed to do about that?
Nope, good point.
So I think that is all I have
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you.
Joe, Chief, if I could, Joe had his hand up before. Come on up, pal. And I'll get back to you. Let me just say one thing. This isn't an attack on the Board of Health. I want to be clear. First of all, I can't say it enough. I respect that they came up on their own to give their opinion. And I don't want to use the word, it's an attack on doing that change. Okay? It's nothing personal to anybody on the Board of Health. Again, I respect what you guys do. But, my problem's with what I consider the overreach. And the one thing I want to say too, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I said, except I guess if you're a selectman. So I'm laughing my ass off that someone came up and gave him a hard time about Facebook. Are you shitting me? You read the stuff you see about us on Facebook, which is fine, I'm not complaining. He didn't attack anybody. He put the bylaws up and raised awareness. I think he did exactly, and he doesn't need me to stick up for him, even though I've known him since I was 4 years old. But are you shitting me? You're coming up and telling him he used the social media without calling anybody a name, putting up the document that's out there, explaining why he was against it? This is a bunch of shit. Go ahead, sir.
All right, guys, so my name's Joe Kenny, 172 Russell Lane.
Our animal control
I'm
officer,
sure
by the
most
way.
of you know me, animal control officer. I also run an exotic animal business in town, probably seen every one of your kids over the past, I don't know, 23 years of running that business. So I'm pretty well versed in animal laws, state, federal. I've fought in other states. I've gone to Florida, I've gone to Virginia, I've been in North Carolina to fight laws on animals. This is something I'm pretty passionate about. I keep animals that would be affected by this, obviously. There's alligators listed, there's a monkey. My monkey was in my 2009 yearbook. So if you go back and look it up, go back, guys. He went to every lacrosse game, too. This has been my life, and these laws, as they're written, are not done correctly, in my opinion. I respect the Board of Health very much so. I've known most of them for a long time, worked with them in many cases, and I don't think they understand how this bill is written, how it's actually going to affect people with your chickens or horses or llamas, right? All the way through. It's the way that this is written is far overreaching. There's wording in there that would allow health agents to walk onto your property unannounced. Wrong. You're going to need to get a warrant for that. You can't just do that. If you do that at my house, it's not going to go accordingly. You're not just going to walk onto my property. I know my rights. I have the right to show a warrant before you go walking onto my property, whether or not that's a health official, police, right? And in this case, if we start doing that, it's going to involve police enforcement, put a weight on them. It's going to put more weight on Board of Health. We only have one health inspector right now. So to go out to Tractor Supply in the spring, and I could not, they sell thousands of chickens every spring at every Tractor Supply, right? They get hundreds in every week. And as Kevin said, the state does ask for lists of people that keep animals. I get it, I understand it, I'm involved in enforcement too, right? I understand that. I think it's a great thing. Kevin's not wrong. When you fill out buying chickens, you go down, you fill out, you're getting your 6 chickens. 6 chickens is the state minimum. If it's before Easter and you're buying ducks, you gotta buy 21, right? There's standards for this stuff, all enforced by Mass Department of Agriculture. There's also standards for exotics through the Division of Fish and Wildlife for the state. That's who regulates that. I love Chris, our health agent. I don't think he has any idea what he's doing when he's telling me about what to do for a snake's care, or what he's doing for how you cut the teeth of a horse, or how you do hoof care on a horse, right? How you do a food plan for a horse that's underweight. They don't know that, right? That's stuff that's set forward by the Mass Department of Agriculture and USDA. Those are the regulating bodies on this. There's a 300 and I think this year's 336-ish pages of laws written on regulating animals through the USDA. Keeping track of animals, and like we say about dog licensing and regulations, great. We have a great rabies program in the state. Almost every state in the U.S. has that. You go to the vet, you get in order for your dog to be seen, it has to be vaccinated to state law. There's state laws requiring different things for animal consumption, but chickens, getting a chicken vaccinated, that's your option, right? If I'm going to eat my chicken, which unfortunately, however you look at this, farm animals were originally made for food, right? You got a chicken, you got a goat, you got a pig. I personally don't want to eat a sheep that's just been vaccinated with a rabies vaccine. My personal opinion, right? As I'm sure most of you wouldn't. You don't want to eat a chicken that's been inoculated with an influenza vaccine, in my personal opinion, right? there's reasons for the laws that Massachusetts has set up, there's reasons for laws that the federal government has set up, and for the town to step in and try to make their own sets of laws for these animals is not the way to do this. It oversteps what the original purpose of this program was, to create a list. Great, I encourage it. I would probably be the one educating most of the people through the town about this stuff, and doing some of the inspections probably with Chris. Chris is already overloaded as it is. I'm overloaded. I think I get like, 16 hours a week, right? So to do this is a little bit extensive. I just think it's overreaching in the way that it's written. I know that, and I've talked to multiple people through the town, I believe that there's going to be some substantial changes to how it's written, but as it's written right now, it's far overreaching. It's going to cost the town a significant amount of money, far more than what people are planning, and it's putting limits on the right for us to have our own privacy on our property. You can't have people from a town just walking in because the neighbor calls and says that they don't like that you have chickens, right? That shouldn't give the town the right to walk onto your property. If there was a law being violated, I understand that, and I think that's great, but I think the way that this is written is far overreaching, and it's going to cause not only issues in the Board of Health Department for money, it's going to cause issues with the police departments for money, sending officers out that we just don't have the funding for, sending officers out to go out with a health agent to do a chicken inspection because people aren't happy that you're walking on their property is going to become a problem.
Thanks, Joe. I just want to move on to the police chief. Thank you. And man, we'll get you right after the police chief, and we're going to act on our vote.
I don't live in Abington, so I don't have a dog in the fight. Am I allowed to say dog in the fight? And we talk about animals.
You have a chicken in the fight?
Chicken in the fight, nothing. The only thing I want to get on the ground floor of this is the cost of this, like Joe said. I'm happy that this is not in place yet. A lot of times people will come up with ideas and talk about the enforcing agents and things like that, and we're just sort of kind of left aside. We have Joe for such a limited period of time, and as I presented before the FinCom the other day, if things don't go well, we don't have Joe at all. So when we're thinking about these things in terms of can we afford it, from our standpoint right now, this would be very taxing on us. I don't know much about the animal world, but I know when it comes to enforcing these things, having a strong, talented animal control officer like Joe is hugely important. He handles animals that scare the death out of me, and we need him. But we only have him for a short period of time. So when we're thinking about these things, we need to think about how lean we are on our side of the house, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
My question just was, when it comes to problem situations where there are people who are not taking care of their animals, I'm pretty sure that they already have the right to send someone out to where there is, like, severe cases in order to resolve that issue already without this regulation.
Absolutely.
So to make a statement saying it's for the betterment of public health is actually a contradiction, because they can already do that already right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Vote is unanimous. Can we send a letter to the Board of Health and ask them the cost implication to this policy?
Yes.
Before it's voted?
There being no further business,
Oh, yes. There being no further business,
I move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. First and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.